Hey, RetconRaider here. Obviously, May was a pretty big month for Phoenix Point. With the release of Backer Build 1 and the newfound coverage through numerous media outlets, the game has gained a lot of hype over the past few weeks. Unfortunately, while this has certainly been good for Snapshot games where publicity and pre-orders are concerned, it didn't really leave them much time to prepare any other official news updates. Instead, their focus this month has been almost entirely on the newly released Backer Build. Not only did Backer Build 1 come out on May 1st, but they also ended up releasing Backer Build 1.2 on May 14th. While this update didn't add any new game content, it did fix numerous bugs, and added in several quality-of-life features that players were requesting. Now, we already talked about the new Backer Build in the last update, so we won't spend much time on it today. Suffice to say, the developers are planning to release new builds once every 2 months, with smaller content and bug-fixing patches, such as the 1.2 update, coming out on a more regular basis. That means that we can probably expect to see the next version of the Backer Build in early July. Aside from the Backer Build, this was actually a pretty quiet month for Phoenix Point. Still, there are a few things worth covering, so let's go down the list. We should probably start with the biggest piece of news, and the most unfortunate, depending on how you look at things. While Snapshot Games was hoping to have the game ready for release by the end of 2018, that date was never really set in stone, and recently they made the difficult decision to officially push that release date back about 6 months. The simple fact of the matter is that, given the hype and expectations surrounding the game, the development team wants to make sure that they have time to get everything right. Phoenix Point has already grown into something much bigger and more ambitious than it was ever originally intended to be, and that extra development time will theoretically allow the developers to add in all sorts of polish and new content that we might not have gotten otherwise. That's not to say that Snapshot Games is blind to the drawbacks of delaying the game's release. A lot of people involved in the project are veterans of the video game industry, so they're well aware of the risks and trade-offs that come with this sort of delay. Hopefully, when we finally do get the game next year, we'll be able to see that the final product really was worth the extra wait. Moving on, the developers have recently shared some new details about things that might be included in the final game. For example, Kevin Hill recently confirmed that the game will include night missions, which will theoretically influence things like visibility and stealth. He also confirmed that the game will include enemy support units, designed to heal or otherwise assist other enemy units in battle. In addition, he mentioned that the development team is currently exploring the possibility of implementing a free-range rotation system for the in-game camera. Perhaps more notably, Kevin also recently shared this mock-up of a new addition to the game's UI. Although this is obviously just a work in progress, this new damage status screen is intended to make it easier to quickly assess a soldier's current health, status effects, and armor condition. Julian Gollop also recently shared some additional details about what the design team might be currently working on. For example, he mentioned that he wanted to test a flexible new cone-based Overwatch system that would allow the player to select the range and direction of any Overwatch shots that they might take. He also specified that units would not gain an accuracy bonus for shooting from higher ground. Rather, due to the game's cover and simulated ballistic systems, shooting from higher ground would simply make it more likely for a unit's shots to go over intervening cover. Julian also provided us with some additional details about the character class system. We previously heard that individual soldiers will be able to multi-class to gain access to a wider variety of perks, some of which will provide basic stat increases, while others might provide entirely new combat abilities. Julian further clarified that each soldier will also have a semi-randomized personal perk track, which will allow for further flexibility when training your characters. Perhaps even more intriguing were some additional details that Julian revealed during his most recent interview with PC Games and Magazine. He mentioned that the game's planned difficulty system, which we already talked about last month, will also make use of a deployment point system. Every mutation and modular body part in the game will have a point value assigned to it, and the player's current difficulty setting will directly influence how many points that enemy squads will be allowed to deploy during a single mission. In addition, that same interview also revealed that the player will be able to assign names to different types of mutants. While the enemies will generally have default names, the player will be able to change the battlefield designation used for different subtypes. That will allow the player to more easily identify what kind of mutants they're facing on the battlefield, while also allowing the player to leave a more personal touch on their campaign. Alan Stroud has also recently shared some of the concepts that he's exploring for possible inclusion in the final game, but it's important to remember that this is all just hypothetical at the moment. These are all mechanics that he's currently pitching or prototyping, and while they're certainly very interesting, there's no guarantee that any of these mechanics will actually make it into the final game. For example, Alan recently discussed how he was considering a mechanic which would allow the player to assign multiple teams to a single mission. Under this system, the player would theoretically assign each team to handle a separate task or assignment in the same mission. At its most basic, this might involve sending in an alpha team to clear out enemy resistance and secure an area, before sending in a beta team to sweep the area for salvage. Under normal circumstances, the tactical combat portion of the mission would be focused on the alpha team, but there would always be a chance that the salvage team would end up having to defend itself against an unexpected attack. Another concept that Alan recently discussed was the idea of building a narrative around not just winning, but also losing. He proposed the idea that while losing too much would ultimately bring a player's campaign to a premature end, individual losses could theoretically be helpful in certain ways. He was careful to clarify that he wasn't necessarily talking about rewarding the players for failure, but rather that the act of failing should sometimes open up new opportunities that the player might not have otherwise gotten. For example, losing a soldier to the mist might lead to a special mission that gives the player the opportunity to go rescue them, which in turn might lead to additional unique opportunities. The idea would be to discourage the player from simply reloading a previous save every time something went wrong. On a less hypothetical note, Alan also recently confirmed that the briefing number 5 will be coming out in the very near future. Much like the past few briefings, this new collection of short stories will be loosely themed around a specific faction, in this case, Synedrion. It will include a total of 8 short stories, 2 reprinted stories, The Second Step and Towards Freedom, as well as 6 new stories, Ideology, The Depths of Civilization number 3, The Good Life, Everything is So Much Worse Than You Thought It Was, Imperfect Physiology, and, the rather colorfully named, It Ain't Over Till It's Over, Jackasses. Alan also mentioned that there will be an official Phoenix Point presentation this upcoming weekend on June 10th at LaveCon in Northamptonshire. While the presentation won't include any exclusive new content, Alan did state that they might still mention some new details about the game. Finally, that brings us to our last bit of new information. This is technically cheating, because this image isn't actually from May. It was just recently revealed on the official Snapshot Games Discord channel on the first week of June. Now, we've seen concept art of Phoenix Point soldiers in the past, but this new piece of concept art shows what appears to be a Phoenix Point operative in basic, low-tier armor. The timing of this reveal is rather interesting too, because while we still know very little about this mysterious organization, that's going to be changing over the next few months. While briefings 3 through 5 focused on the 3 main factions that the player will be interacting with, Alan Stroud and Jonas Kairatsis have confirmed that the briefing number 6 will instead be focused on the Phoenix Project itself. So, while May might have been a somewhat quiet month, aside from the backer build of course, the next couple of months should be pretty exciting. Between LaveCon, the next 2 briefings, and backer build number 2, we've got a lot to look forward to. But for now, this is RetconRaider, signing off. Thanks for listening. Oh, and remember, although I do love talking about Phoenix Point, you can find out more about the game by visiting the official website, the Facebook page, the YouTube page, the subreddit, the official Discord channel, or the original crowdfunding campaign over on Fig. Links are in the description.